So hello and welcome everybody to this special webinar on Asia Pacific Climate Week, which will start on the 2nd of September. We're all hugely looking forward to it, and we're very, very glad that so many journalists have joined this webinar. We have approximately 60 media representatives online. I'm joined here on the panel by Ovais Samad, who is our Deputy Executive Secretary and will be in Bangkok and will also be able to speak to the press on location. We have with us Sohail Pasha, who is the team lead for the UNFCCC Asia Pacific Climate Week team. And we are joined from Bangkok by Stefanos Fotiou, who is Director of the Environment and Development Division of ESCAP, ESCAP being the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia. We'll start this webinar with about 25 minutes of presentations, summing up what the Climate Week is about and what specific outcomes we can expect. And then there will be a Q&A session. There'll be a possibility for journalists to put questions. You can do that via the chat function, which is integrated into the webinar. So please do make use of that. And if you would already like to start formulating your questions now or as early as possible, that would also be very useful for us. So without further ado, I would hand over to Ovais to speak about the big picture of where we are right now. Thanks, Climate Action.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to all the journalists who have joined online, and a special thank to Asia Led, who have provided the platform and the technical arrangements for this webinar. And I'd like to also welcome the other panelists, Stefanos. I'm looking forward to seeing you, Stefanos, very soon in Bangkok. So at the outset, let me, first of all, as I said, really appreciate this opportunity and highlight the importance of the communication that we need to convey at all levels. And journalists and people in the media, you are an extremely important catalyst, a medium through which United Nations, and in this particular case, the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, can convey those messages. And that message is as follows: that we are confronted with an enormous emergency, which is a climate emergency, that we are seeing everywhere, all around us. Every news article, news media report that we see in TV and other forms, that there is global warming that is affecting our livelihoods, and the impacts are being witnessed and seen everywhere. So what do we do about it is to ensure that we all enhance our ambition, enhance our action to take action on climate change. And what that action requires is for everyone, countries, regions, cities, societies, private sector, and individuals, all of us, you and me in particular as well, to take climate action very seriously and do our part. That is what it's all about. And in that context, the Asia Pacific Climate Week, and we do this in every region of the world, these are important forums that brings together different stakeholders from different parts of the society, again, private sector, regional organizations, governments, individuals, civil society, and the media, to inform about the urgency, about what is happening, what needs to be done, what is being done, and what still remains to be done. And in terms of what remains to be done is to enhance, as I said, the actions of all of us to address the impacts of climate change and to slow down the global warming by sticking to the agreements, the goals and targets of the Paris Agreement, which requires that the global warming should remain well below 2 degrees, preferably 1.5 degrees. But unfortunately, the current actions at global level are not sufficient to reach us, to get us to that level. In fact, at the current rate, will greatly overshoot that target. And that is a serious concern to everyone. So what will happen in Climate Week in Asia Pacific is, first of all, it's an extremely important region. Asia Pacific and the countries and the region of that of the world has enormous potential to start with, and also the impacts of climate change. Potential to move towards renewable energy, to get into the process of sustainable development, which is happening in Asia Pacific at a very rapid rate in countries like India, like China, Indonesia, Philippines, and other countries around in that region. So what they need to do is to, while that development is happening, that needs to happen in a sustainable, in a more responsible manner, so that it does not contribute negatively to the impacts of climate change. And there are huge economic benefits in doing that. There are trillions of dollars of profits that can be made by companies to move by moving towards renewable and more sustainable energy sources and sustainable way of living in many ways. The way we eat, the way we consume, the way we move, the way we transport, the supply chains of many companies, they all need to change. And there are many, many opportunities. And that's something which I'd like to emphasize, that taking climate action is not detrimental to the economy. In fact, it's the other way around. There are very many positive impacts of taking that climate action. So we'll be highlighting that during Asia Pacific Climate Week. And as we did in Africa, as we did in Latin America, and will soon happen also in New York during the General Assembly, the outcomes, the actions that will be displayed in those climate weeks will feed into the Secretary General's Climate Summit that will happen in September in New York. And the UN Secretary General has taken climate change as the most important issue facing the global community and therefore the United Nations. So he has called for a climate summit where he is asking world leaders and governments and heads of state to come with, not with speeches, but with concrete climate action. So what we will then come up with during the Climate Week in Asia Pacific will feed into that process. And that process, or when I say process, the event of Secretary General Summit in New York next month will feed into the climate change process, which is the COPs. And this year COP will take place in December in Chile, which brings all the countries together and also non-party stakeholders in agreeing to major decisions that will be taken at that time. So I'll stop there, and as I said right at the beginning, we want the journalists, the media community to also raise their ambition, raise their action in terms of reporting, in terms of helping the advocacy role, in terms of conveying the message, the urgency that we all need to take urgent climate action. So thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Owais. So I'd hand over now to Stefanos Fotiou, Director of the Environment and Development Division of ESCAP, the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, which is also the host venue of the conference in Bangkok. So Stefanos, can you maybe tell us a little bit about the political specifics of the meeting, and above all, what can be done to help countries raise ambition, but not just countries, also other stakeholders at this meeting?
Thank you, John, and good morning, good afternoon from my side. Owais, Sohel, nice to see you, and looking forward to see you next week. And let me take the opportunity to start by saying that I'm working 15 years in the UN system, and I don't say this because I have the UN's CCC colleagues in front of me, but this is really an exhibition of the one UN spirit. You know, the UN agencies are notorious for doing a lot of things alone, but under the leadership of UNFCCC and also the very good dialogue between our two executive secretaries, ESCAP and UNFCCC and other agencies have come together. So thank you very much for providing this platform. I mean, Owais has highlighted the urgency. And from my side, I want to say that Asia and the Pacific starts to have an increased responsibility on responding to the urgency for climate action. And this is happening because Asia Pacific has become now a main contributor to greenhouse gases emissions. I mean, as per latest data, almost half of the emissions, not half, it's about 48%, they're coming from this part of the world. It's explained actually because now most of the development has moved here. Asia has become the industrial hub of the world. And at the same time, there is increased responsibility, but there's also increased response. So we see some very encouraging, and I would say, leadership movements from some countries in Asia Pacific. And I think they even start to be reflected in some of the most important documents, which is the nationally determined contributions of the countries in Asia Pacific to implement the Paris Agreement. You know, it was this region, and actually the Marshall Islands, that it was the first country to submit a more ambitious national determined contributions. And then other countries like Nepal, Pakistan, they are followed up. Also, we have good news on how some countries, they are becoming leaders on renewable energy. China is right now the biggest exporter of solar energy, and data indicate that right now solar energy in China costs less than electricity by coal or by oil. We get similar messages, and we have similar analytical results from India. 2/3 of the coal power plants in India, I repeat, 2/3, 64%, they operate at a cost that it's much higher than to build new solar and wind energy plants. So I think that the economic argument for climate action, the one that Ove said it's already there, has been done in Asia Pacific. What it's need now, I think, is to take this economic argument and make it a kind of political statement and political commitment. I'm convinced that all the stakeholders, the governments, the private sector, they do actually want to contribute to climate action and climate mitigation. But sometimes we have something that I will call political inertia and probably some corporate fear. Companies are afraid to do the business unusual way because they don't know what will be the result on their action. But we do have cases in Asia Pacific, countries and companies that they have innovated. I was talking yesterday with the chief executive of a cement company here in Thailand, that he explained to me that they decided to go through a $150 million investment for waste heat recovery. And they have done this because they saw that the rate of return will be immense, and they will have a payoff period on less than 3 years. So these pilots are existing, and now I think that political leadership can take these pilots and mainstream them. And on this action, I think that countries in Asia Pacific, and especially developing countries, they should be supported in 3 distinctive areas. One is climate finance. I mean, climate finance is really accelerating in the region. The last 5 years, we had a 20% increase on financial flows for climate action, but still more money are needed, and actually we need more from the private sector and domestic resource mobilization. The second, which I think it will become probably the area that it will define the climate success in this region, is what we call vertical integration, is how the cities will respond to the emergency of climate change. Asia Pacific is predominantly urban now. Most of the development is happening at cities and other urban areas. And I think we see very good examples from cities like the city of Seoul, for example, on how they are tackling climate action. And the third is climate governance, how the how the targets of climate change will become parts of the national development planning. So I want to close my short intervention with this positive messages. Of course, there's a long way that needs to be, and long run that needs to be taken forward, but I am confident that more and more leaders and more private sector and other stakeholders recognizing the benefits behind climate action in Asia and the Pacific. And I think that the Climate Week could provide one more platform to say that there's really very good opportunities here, economic, business, political, and also social opportunities for climate action. And we're looking forward to have this message amplified by the media and passed to various stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefanos. So again, I would just like to remind participants that you do have the possibility to put questions that should be particularly interesting for journalists. Please go ahead and do that now. And meanwhile, I'll hand it over to Sohail Pasha, who can speak a little bit about the specifics of the meeting, perhaps also a little bit to the issue of how exactly governments will be assisted in working on their climate action plans. We have an initiative together with UNDP on that. Perhaps you could go a little bit into that. And then what other showcasing activities will take place and how networks can be established.
Sure. Thanks, John. Thanks to the organizers for giving this opportunity and also organizing this webinar. I will briefly speak about the highlights of the full week and also touch upon the point what might be interesting for media outlets. Monday and Tuesday, the major highlights is the NDC dialogue, and followed by, on Wednesday, there is a high-level segment, plenaries designed for Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday we have the Secretary General's transformation areas, thematic blocks. We have 6 thematic blocks, which are energy and industry transition, infrastructure, cities, and local action. Under that, there is transport and buildings, and resilience and adaptation, which is a key in the region, and also nature-based solution, where we focus on ocean ecosystems and water resources. So that's for Thursday highlights, and then on Friday we do have climate finance focused plenaries and also workshops, some technical workshops there. Other than that, so governments and local governments, as well as central government and non-party stakeholders, have opportunities to showcase their work through side events. Action Hub, which is designed to provide platform to have short interventions, and exhibition booths, of course, and let's not forget about the Knowledge Corner, where NGOs, civil society, youth will be having space to engage in the week and contribute to that. As you know, that the year 2019 is labeled as the Envisioned, so while we designed the program and the theme, we had ambition focused theme this year, and all the planners are designed so to have an outcome towards raising ambition in the region and to the countries. And the details of the sessions are available on the website, including the networks, the speaker profiles, and also the expected outcome from each session. They're publicly available now, so you could check it out. In terms of John's question on how we could help further the government, so you could look at the agencies. There are about 20 agencies doing the exhibition booths. I'm sure there will be high representation from those agencies present in the booth, so that will be one way to connect with those agencies and know about their work and what they offer in terms of support and collaboration for the region and what they have for the governments. Other than that, it's an opportunity for networking, and from the speaker profile you can expect who have confirmed, and probably interview opportunities will be there for media outlets, and building on networking. So I will stop to that.
Mm-hmm. Now. I think it's also worth mentioning the very strong youth participation. There'll be a youth representative. Can you maybe say a few words about that?
So you might know that the UNFCCC process has a constituency which is called Yongo. So we have Yongo representatives present at the opening to give a youth perspective to this event, to this conference, and in addition, we have 3 other youth representatives who are contributing to different formal sessions during the week of conference.
Yeah, I would also mention that in this day and age, digital communications is very important. So social media, people do use Instagram accounts, above all young people, and LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. So we'll be doing a certain amount of social media on location. Other UN agencies are quite active there as well. We know that Caring for Climate, which is a World Bank initiative, is coming in with a group of young people, students, who will be taking over their social media accounts and actually posting material on their Instagram account from on location. I think we can expect some colorful and interesting outputs from that. UNDP is also very present with a good social media team. I'm very grateful for that, for everybody who's supporting this meeting. So stay tuned, and above all, follow the hashtag AP Climate Week. Hashtag AP Climate Week. That's how you can follow the conversation on social media. And I'm just having a look at my colleague to see if there's been a question from a media representative. I'm not sure who that representative was. It's important to say who it was, Lucia. But the question is, and we can add that information later, what can be done to dissuade Asian nations with major coal power plant building plans to switch to renewable energy and energy efficiency options instead? Stefanos, would you like to take that question?
Yes, thank you. I think we need to make the economic case, and I think the economic case is there, but we need to make it more vocal, more vibrant, and more known. So it should not be only experts' knowledge that solar and wind is cheaper than coal right now. That's one thing. Second, I think that we need to internalize the externalities of coal. Burning coal is not only bad for the climate, burning coal is bad for the health. So in Asia Pacific, a lot of cities, as you know, they are suffering from air pollution. And a lot of this air pollution is coming from coal burning plants. And this is something that we need to highlight and to say that we have co-benefits from getting rid of coal. The third, I think, is that we need a combination of allow me to call them carrots and sticks for climate action. So we need carrots as incentives. So some countries could start moving to renewables, but also some sticks. I mean, we need to go back probably to 1992 to the first Rio Summit and remember one very important principle there, the polluter pays principle. So we need to also institute these things. Last but not least, I think we need to approach more the private sector, young entrepreneurs, and present them the innovation opportunities and the financial benefits that they will bring if they switch to renewables. So it's a combination of price mechanism, political and economic incentives, and innovation.
Very well said, Stefanos. I fully agree with everything that has been said. In addition to those points you mentioned, there is also something referred to in the geopolitics as peer pressure. And that is extremely important, and many countries in the region are already stepping it up, and I think that is being watched by other countries in the region. So that is, and as I said in the beginning, that moving to renewable energy and getting away from coal and other fossil fuel powered plants is now is economically beneficial. So there is the business sense that makes it possible. So I think all of that is necessary, and we will, during the Climate Week, make it even more prominent in terms of conveying that message. So we hope that will be resonated.
Okay, I can see that my colleagues are furiously scribbling away, writing down more questions that have come in from the media. If you could hand them over, please. Thank you very much, Lucia. So another question, how could this year's expected outcomes help address the continuing dependency on coal by Asian countries? So that's the same question. So I think we've just answered that. And how will this event help secure the necessary climate finance and divestment from fossil fuels?
Yeah, I think those are again good question and relevant in terms of what's happening in the region. In terms of what the expected outcome of this year, especially looking at COP25 and there, following on from last year's agreement in Katowice, where the rule book of Paris Agreement was agreed, And there was still one element that was left, which was the so-called Article 6 of Paris Agreement, which deals with market mechanisms. And that is something that we are working very hard and diligently to make it happen. And that will have an impact on what the countries and especially the private sector will do to move towards a renewable energy environment and process. So Article 6 outcome will facilitate that. And with regard to the climate finance and divestment from fossil fuel, that I think, again, the finance industry has taken note. In fact, recently it was, I think, the governor of Bank of England. He very clearly stated that this is something which the finance industry and the governors of the national banks around the world need to take that into serious consideration to start divesting from fossil fuel into renewable energy. And that again links back to what I've been saying right from the beginning, is that it makes business sense. And that will happen. And we're just seeing that, that the tide is turning. And we will make sure that that is emphasized even more. And I remain very optimistic that those changes will happen. But we just need to make it sooner than later.
Stefanos, would you be able to tell us about specific examples in the Asia-Pacific region of climate finance flows which are now being ramped up?
John, could you repeat this because there was some interruption?
Yes, and would you be able to give us perhaps just one or two examples of countries in the Asia-Pacific region which are meanwhile benefiting from increased climate finance?
Okay, thank you. I think Pakistan is one of these countries, and actually we have seen Pakistan reflecting this in their national determined contributions, because they have, in the first one, they had a conditional and an unconditional one. And the conditional was on climate finance, and now they are receiving more finance. I think also India and China are the two big beneficiaries here when it comes to public climate finance from the Green Climate Fund and from the GEF, and also when it comes to private investments in the renewables.
Another question from Ken Hickson. With the recent issue of forest fires and deforestation in the Amazon getting global attention, to what extent will the Bangkok conference focus on deforestation, illegal logging, and forest fires, which are also rampant in Southeast Asia? Yes, Sohail, could you perhaps take that question?
Well, thanks for the question. As always indicated also that we are very much looking forward to an outcome in COP in Chile, Santiago, on Article 6. So one of the mechanisms that have worked so far is the forestry project level activities that have secured funding in countries, especially in Asia Pacific, Indonesia, and forestry in Philippines as well, is a mechanism to be in place. So one of that's we are highlighting markets and use of market incentives. So there are programs on that, and specific to Article 6, what we can expect in future, which will contribute to that at the project and program level. So that's one of the key highlights in the program as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we have a question specifically to Stefanos of ESCAP in Bangkok, and it's from Trudy, a journalist in Bangkok, who asks, you mentioned political inertia in the region. What is driving this political inertia? Is it a lack of public or media pressure on governments to speed up the transition to a low carbon future?
Okay, thank you, Trudy. I mean, lack of, I would say, public pressure is part of the inertia. So we see, for example, in Europe, how these Friday movements, they have motivated countries to get a step forward. And I think we need to see such public pressure here. Another thing is that the impacts of climate change in many countries in the region right now are usually felt mostly by the poor. And it's the poor that they don't have a direct saying on the design of climate action. So I think something that it will be helpful is if we have what we call climate justice. If the ones that they are suffering are in the drawing table when the governments are designing climate change mitigation and adaptation measures. The third, I think, is a pressure towards the corporate sector. Not a pressure by complaining to the corporate sector, but a pressure to showcase to the corporate sector what are the benefits behind climate action, and that the innovators of today will become the leaders of tomorrow. So many times action is not happening because people are afraid, because they don't want to change, because they believe there's going to be some impacts. And I think we have to be clear with them. Yes, any change comes with some impacts, but it will take just a small time for companies and for governments to adapt, and then they will become leaders. So I think the moment that the corporate sector will understand that it's not just because they need to be environmentally friendly that they need to do climate action. The existence of development depends on climate action. The moment they will understand this, and media could be very helpful to this, I think they will become more persuasive, and then the private sector could even itself push governments to get off this inertia of political action.
Okay, here's another question from Ken Hickson in Bangkok, and perhaps a question which is also best addressed by you, Stefanos, because it's specifically about the region and about an SCAP report. So the question is, last year there was a UN SCAP report which identified Asia Pacific as the most resource inefficient region in the world. What actions have been taken by UN agencies to make companies and governments aware of this and to capitalize on the benefits of addressing the problem?
Okay, thanks for the question. I know the report you make reference, Ken, we published last November here in Bangkok. Indeed, Asia Pacific it requires double the amount of resources to produce one single unit of GDP vis-a-vis the world. In SCAP, we have done three things to increase the awareness of the governance. One is that in addition to the report, which was a very technical document, we have developed an online application which shows the benefits of resource efficiency, and we translate how much money each government will save and how much more jobs could put on the economy by improving the efficiency of energy, water, and material in the economy. The second is that together with colleagues from the UN Environment Programme and also other agencies, we have done an online training program on resource efficiency, and we offer it in all governments. And the third is that we do also country level specific training and capacity building and awareness work on demand by country. So recently we concluded a training on water, on industrial water efficiency in Bangladesh, together with UNIDO and UNDP, and we are doing this kind of interventions more and more. So creating the knowledge on how resource efficiency could help economics, providing training to a very wide part of stakeholders via online tools, and then going to the country level and focusing on specific areas for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefanos. I think we'll slowly draw to a close now. I think it's been very useful. I would mention, by the way, that the entire meeting is being offset. It's entirely climate neutral. We have information about that on our website. We put out a press release yesterday detailing exactly the sustainability measures being deployed. During Climate Week, yes. All of our staff travel is already being offset. But the entire meeting, so the participation of all the more than 1,300 participants will be offset, and information about that is available. My name's John Hay, by the way. I do communications for the Secretariat and will be on the ground in Bangkok if you need to get in touch with me as a journalist to arrange an interview. My contact details are on the press release that we issued yesterday, which features prominently on the UNFCCC website. So I'd like to thank all the participants of this briefing. I thought it was very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining, and hope to see some of you in Bangkok next week.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.